in Tallahassee with Miami and Florida State. Probably the game of the weekend. You could argue Alabama, Vandy. We'll get to that in a second. But Miami, the Hurricanes, number 3 team in the country. This is the best Miami team I have seen in my life. Obviously, the early 2000s teams were incredible. I was born in 2000. I have no clue, what those teams were like as far as watching them in person. But this is the best I've ever seen the Hurricanes look. 3 in the country, 4.5-point favorites on the road, Doak Campbell Stadium in Tallahassee, against the 18th-ranked Florida State Seminoles. And unfortunately, this game lost a little bit of its luster, right? Florida State was playing on the road last week on a Friday night against Virginia, and that is just the textbook trap game that Florida State found themselves in last week. On the road, right? Good opponent, or a decent opponent, not a great opponent. Virginia's fine. All right, they have the ability to pull an upset, but nobody's talking about Virginia as a college football playoff team, right? And right before a rivalry game, right? So that's that classic, oh, look ahead. Oh, here comes, Miami that we're going to be hosting in a couple of weeks. Next thing you know, you get beat by Virginia and they're storming the field on you. So it lost a little bit of its luster. I think this would be an unbelievable game, obviously, had Florida State not lost. By the way, they almost won. It was an overtime crazy game against Virginia. And, at parts, I think they played good enough to win that football game. They certainly showed some of their weaknesses there in that game there as well. So it was a Friday night game at Virginia last week, so they have an extra day, kind of a semi-longer week, right? Not playing on Saturday, playing on Friday instead. But Miami had a bye last week, so they've been focused on the Seminoles for 2 weeks. And, we did our college football top 10 earlier in the week. I have Miami at that 3 spot. The AP poll has Miami at that 3 spot as well. And they're just a really well-rounded team. That offensive line is really, really good. Carson Beck is the least pressured quarterback out of anybody in the country. And say what you want about Carson Beck, but he took some unnecessary flack for what transpired at Georgia last year. Georgia had the most drops in the country. They were not helping him out whatsoever. This is an opportunity for him to have less pressure, right? He was the man at Georgia for a while, highly touted guy, sat behind Bennett for a while. The expectations were through the roof and probably a little bit unrealistic for Carson Beck. Now he has an opportunity to go down to South Beach, certainly a weaker conference, play for a big-time program that's trying to get back to national relevance in Miami, and he's got a good team around him, and he's been doing a good job. That defense is really, really good. That defensive line is really, really good. I think Rueben Bain, pass rusher for Miami, is one of the best defensive players in the country. Not going to say the best. Obviously, that's Caleb Downs. But he's really, really good, and he's going to be really, really good on Sundays there as well. And that defensive line is really athletic and fast. And I think that is going to be the key in this game. Because what made Florida State so good against Alabama in week 1 was obviously the quarterback Castellanos, his ability to run the football, right? The short area quickness in which he possessed, getting to the outside, getting upfield, and he also threw the ball really well in the game as well. And Alabama, the defensive line for Alabama, couldn't do anything about it. Could do absolutely nothing about it. Now, we talked about last week with Ohio State and Washington what it would look like with Damon Williams. And I sat up here and said, well, if Damon Williams can get outside the pocket and hit those rush lanes and pick up first downs with his legs, Washington has a chance. But if he gets sucked in by those linebackers in that defense line, Ohio State, Washington's cooked. Damon Williams was not able to use his legs in that game, get outside. Those linebackers are incredible. Great defensive line, by the way, for Ohio State. And they weren't able, Damon Williams was not able to get free in that game. And that, to me, is the kind of the same situation here in this game with Miami. If Castellanos can create with his legs and escape the defensive line and the linebackers when things break down, they're going to have an opportunity to win this game. But that defensive line for Miami, man, they're athletic, they're quick, and they're just really, really good there as well. And, I think they're going to have an opportunity there to really show how good they are in this game and really perhaps limit what Florida State and Castellanos can do in this game. Miami's just really, really well-rounded. As I mentioned, a good offensive line. They've got weapons on the outside, a solid defense, hence the number 3 ranking in the country at this point in the AP poll. They've also had a lot of success in Tallahassee. The Canes have won 4 of their last 5 games at Florida State. That certainly is positive for them as well. I have my questions about Mario Cristobal. He, of course, lost them a couple of games last year, but from what I have gathered, he seems to be doing a fine job coaching them up this year. And we're going to find out in this game how real Miami is. I think there's some people that say maybe they're a little bit overrated. I don't think they really are at this point. I don't see how you can't have them at number 3. Notre Dame, who we'll talk about in a little bit, that's a really good team despite their 2 losses. And, it's a big win for them. against Notre Dame there, obviously. But after this week, the schedule for Miami is terrible. It is really, really bad. Obviously, they play in the ACC. It's a bad conference. But, if they win this week, I don't really know who's going to give them a massive test, before they ultimately get to the college football playoff at this point. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform, see if Carson Beck can continue taking steps in the right direction. But this is a great football game, and certainly Florida State has the ability to win. They're going to be playing with their chip on their shoulder, right? Because they started off, obviously had the dreadful year last year, and they start off with a big-time win. They're stringing together some wins. All of a sudden, people are starting to take notice of Florida State. Florida State, are they back? Are they back? And they lose on the road to Virginia. So they're going to be playing with a big chip on their shoulder. Norvell's going to have them ready to go. Malzahn, he's going to be pulling out all the tricks offensively. And, of course, Malzahn has had a pedigree of showing up and, having his teams or his offenses play really well in big games. We'll see if they're able to do that again against Florida or against Miami in this game at Doak Campbell Stadium. They're going to be having the FSU war chant going. It's going to be an incredible game. I believe it's a 7:30 type of game. And don't have a pick. It's not on our best bets of the weekend. I think it's going to be a great game. Gut says Miami finds a way to get a victory, but it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if Florida State won that football game. And then the next best game of the weekend, or maybe this is the best game of the weekend, Vandy and Alabama. Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa. Alabama has quieted down some of the critics after their performance last week in between the hedges against Georgia, as that was an incredible performance from Kalen DeBoer. His team looked ready. His team looked tough, looked physical, and they absolutely were ready to go in this football game last week. And now they obviously have to play Diego Pavia in Vanderbilt. And Vandy obviously beat them at their place last year. Pavia is back, and that same kind of style of quarterback that has given Alabama trouble in the past. The ability to do some stuff with their legs and just that tough, gritty type of football player. I think in a lot of ways he reminds you of Hayden's King, right, playing at Georgia Tech. Just a tough, physical guy. His teammates love him, right? He just kind of embodies the entire spirit of the team. Everybody rallies around him. He's a tough dude, and he's a really, really good football player. And, Vandy, Clark Lee has done a tremendous job with that program. And, I think a lot of people last year are like, borderline fluke, whatever. They're not going to do much this year. Don't look now, but they're undefeated. One big win going to South Carolina, who a lot of people thought going into the season that South Carolina with Lenora Sellers, he was going to have a Heisman campaign. He was going to be really good. Carolina was going to have an opportunity to make the playoff. They went there and beat the crud out of South Carolina in that game. I believe it was like 31-7. Beyond that, they haven't played a ton of top opponents, but that offense is really, really good. And, Bama, obviously a massive win. They've quieted down some of their critics, but they're going to get incredibly loud once more if they lose this game at home. But, it's a big win, and we've been talking highly of Alabama, but we also have to understand the fact that Alabama still has a lot of holes on their team, right? This is a team that doesn't run the football very well at all. Now, they got Jam Miller back last week. That will certainly help them in this game. And they certainly don't stop the run very well at all. Again, got Tim Keenan, their big nose tackle, back last week. That should help there a little bit. But really the reason why this team has had success in recent weeks is because they might be the best passing attack in college football. What Ty Simpson is able to do with his weapons, Bernard, Ryan Williams, it has been unbelievable. And Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb are clearly settling into what they do offensively. But this is an Alabama team that gave up over 200 yards rushing to Florida State, and, by the way, gave up over 200 yards rushing last week against Georgia, and were able to come away and still win that football game. You could argue there's a couple plays here and there. Georgia had a critical, drop, obviously, in that football game. Some mistakes there, going for it instead of kicking the field goal, coming up short. Georgia had plenty of opportunities to win that game, and they weren't able to come away and do that. So Alabama is still not a very buttoned-up team, and they're very reliant on that passing attack. And if that passing attack is off a little bit, Ty Simpson struggles a little bit, this game looks totally different. 11.5, that's a lot of points. That's a lot of points. Not one of our best bets of the weekend. I'm not going to touch it. But I feel like Alabama's going to win this game. But, 11.5, that is a lot. Also of note, Alabama is 35-1 at home their last 36 games. So say what you want about Kalen DeBoer. Say what you want about the standard falling from Nick Saban. Kalen DeBoer still wins at Bryant-Denny Stadium, and I expect him to continue that here in this game. But 11.5 does seem like a lot of points. Diego Pavia, they did it before, right? And Diego Pavia, again, has been talking throughout the week, this week, And should be a great football game. 3:30 in Tuscaloosa. Going to be a great crowd. And College Game Day obviously will be there, and that will be unbelievable. Vanderbilt and Alabama in the SEC. Moving on here, still got a couple of more games that we are going to discuss on the show. Texas and Florida. Texas obviously opened on the road against Ohio State, lost it 14-7. Arch Manning, people were saying, oh, Heisman guy, one of the best players in the country, might be the number 1 overall pick, and then clearly Arch Manning has not lived up to that at this point, as he, mechanically has had some issues, decision-making he's had some issues, clearly not one of the best quarterbacks in college football at this point. Now, he had some time to kind of, relax a little bit against some bad opponents. Forget, the first team. It was a UTEP. It was a Sam Houston State, right? Just they've had layups these past few weeks, and now they turn to the SEC schedule, and they got to go on the road to the Swamp. Florida obviously only has 1 win this year. They are downright bad. Napier, good chance he gets fired, but the Swamp is still a real environment. That's still a very difficult place to play, and I still think they will show up and show out for this game, and it's going to be challenging for Arch Manning. Spreads jumped around. It was 4.5. It was 6.5. I think now it's 5.5 in favor of Texas. And I feel good about Texas winning this game, mainly because that defense is real. That defense, in my opinion, is the second best defense in the country behind Ohio State. They've only allowed 4 touchdowns this season. Florida's defense, by the way, is solid as well. Despite how bad they've been, they've only allowed 5 touchdowns this season. But I think you'll see Arch Manning take a step in the right direction. Is he going to be great in this game? No, but he doesn't have to be great in this game for them to win. He's got to be better than he was against Ohio State, but he doesn't need to be great for them to win this football game. Second road environment, we'll see how he's improved, if at all, over the course of these past couple of weeks. Head coaching advantage obviously goes to Sark over Napier, but Napier also is coaching for his job. He does have really good defense. But, DJ Lagway, I thought he was going to be a really good player. Well, he can't stop throwing the ball to the other team. And when you do that at an absurd rate, you're not going to win many games in college football. I just don't see how Florida's going to score enough points to win this game. I just don't. Because, what teams have done with DJ Lagway is they've taken away some of the big plays over the top, some of the explosive plays down the field. They've taken those away, and that has hurt him really bad because he doesn't have the ability to just sit there and operate an offense, take what the defense gives him for whatever reason. He's got all the talent in the world, but he has not been able to put it together. Maybe that's a coaching issue, but I did not expect Lagway to be this bad as he has been. So I just don't think Florida's going to be able to score enough points in this game. I don't think Arch needs to be Superman and do crazy stuff in this game. He does need to improve. We do need to see significant improvement from what he did against Ohio State to what he does here against Florida. I think you will see it. Not one of the best bets of the weekend, but I think Texas finds a way to win this game on the road. 2 more that we're going to talk about before we get into our best bets of the weekend. Texas Tech at Houston. Texas Tech, clearly to me, the best team in the Big 12. Both these teams are undefeated, but let's be honest, Houston I don't think is very close to the level in which you're talking about with Texas Tech. Both these teams have a common opponent in Oregon State. Texas Tech handled them no problem. Houston struggled a little bit. And Houston really, really struggles when protecting their quarterback, Connor Wigman. Wigman did a nice job against Colorado. He was able to win that game, but he is 134 out of 136. Houston is in quarterback pressure rate allowed. That is horrible. They are not blocking anybody there along that offensive line. And Tech's defensive line is probably the best in the Big 12. And I'm not going to say it's one of the best in the country, but they're a really solid unit up there. And we saw them dominate the line of scrimmage against Utah. I'll be the first to admit I didn't think they were going to manhandle Utah like that. I thought Utah was going to win that football game. And Utah, on paper, has got a pretty solid offensive line. And Texas Tech made easy work out of them. They bullied them, and I expect they're going to do that again against Houston in this game, and I just don't see Wigman as having much of a chance. Also, by the way, Texas Tech, their defensive coordinator, he comes from Houston, so he's going to have a good idea of what they're trying to do from an attacking standpoint in this game. And, question that quarterback, right? Baron Morton was the guy for Texas Tech, and he's a solid quarterback. He gets hurt in that Utah game, and they go with Will Hammond, who comes in and looks like the starter, who did a tremendous job. So I think they're leaning with Morton being able to go in this game. We'll see. Will Hammond, clearly a very competent backup to go in there and play at a high level. Texas Tech is favored by 11.5 on the road against Houston, and we will revisit this game in a second. And then lastly, Boise State and Notre Dame. Notre Dame quietly these past 2 weeks has responded. All right, they hang on 56 points on Purdue, who obviously Purdue is completely rebuilding here at this point. And then they also hang 56 on Arkansas and get Sam Pittman fired after starting out 0-2 this year. Notre Dame, to me, I mean, they're ranked 21. Again, this is the AP poll. They've got a 2-2 record, and I get they shouldn't be ranked higher than that based on that record. Their losses, by the way, were A&M and Miami, who are 2 top 5 teams, right? It seems like they're 2 top 5 teams here at this point. And Notre Dame's clearly better than that. I think they're going to run the table and make it to the playoff, to be honest with you, because they're offensively are really, really good. And C.J. Carr is really, really good as well. I have some questions on defense, right? Usually with the Marcus Freeman team, they play good defense. The defense has been bad, right, against Miami, and A&M was horrible at home in that game. So you have question marks there. But I think you're going to see Notre Dame at home respond in a big way. And I think they understand that, hey, they can't just squeak by in these games. They have to be really good in these games and kind of, show that they can do it. Because, we sat here and questioned, like, even if they run the table, could they get in? And based on what they've done these past 2 weeks, I think they can. But they're going to have to continue to play at a high level. And, Boise State, obviously, they're a little feisty. But, it's a 20.5-point spread. But I think Notre Dame's going to – people are going to start talking about Notre Dame a little bit more here because I think they're about to go on a run and string together some victories.